My name is Lynn Barnes, and I'm 29. On Christmas Eve, I sat alone in my car outside a house dressed like a catalog's idea of love. Twinkle lights stitched to the gutters, fake snow dusted on boxwoods, a wreath big enough to crown a parade float. Inside were the people who were supposed to be my people, laughing, clinking glasses, deciding whether I was still worth a chair. The heater hadn't caught up yet. Breath fogged the windshield, a thin cinema of nerves. I had a gift bag riding shotgun, homemade fudge, and a handwritten card. Grandma loves walnuts. I don't, but I folded them in anyway. I stared at the door, at the golden spill of light, and told myself I could leave. No one had texted me. Not really. What I had was a forwarded invite from my cousin Jenna. You should come. It's still your family, even if things are weird. Even if things are weird is family code for arrive quietly and don't take up oxygen. My phone buzzed. Noah, my boyfriend, was on a red-eye, work trip back in the morning. Noah. You don't owe them a performance. Noah. If you go in with boundaries. If you don't, I'll still pick you up for pancakes at 9. I typed, erased, typed again. I'll just drop the fudge. I killed the engine, grabbed the bag, and walked. The gravel clicked under my boots like a warning. Before I could raise my hand to knock, the door opened. Uncle Dave stood there, shoulders squared like security at a bar that hates fun. Well, look who wandered back, he said. No smile, no welcome. His breath made white ribbons in the cold. Merry Christmas, I said. You're not one of us anymore. It was quiet. No music, just those 6 words, placed carefully like tacks on a rug. I felt my face settle, the way a pond goes flat after a skipped stone. Inside, behind him, I could see the foyer. Garland, a framed family photo from a summer I'm not in. Mom's voice floated over his shoulder, bright and brittle. Oh, it's you. She stepped into view, a mug that said merry and bright curled in her hand like a prop. I gave your seat to someone who actually shows up. There is a special kind of choreography in public cruelty. The light voice, the seasonal mug, the way the smile stays for the audience and never reaches me. I didn't argue, didn't tell her I'd been here 10 minutes convincing myself to try. Didn't remind her that when Grandpa died, I was the one who drove Grandma to his lawyer, made sure the estate was navigated with dignity, and that when my trade school graduation didn't have a string quartet, Grandpa still stood up and clapped like I'd landed on the moon. Instead, Uncle Dave stepped back into the glow and closed the door. Not a slam. A gentle, practiced shut, like I was a package misdelivered. I held the bag of fudge and the feeling that something had finally, irrevocably tipped. The cold bit through my jacket. I walked back to my car, slid in, and stared at my phone because I had been saving something. An old wound, neatly labeled. 2 months ago, when Grandma spent a night at the hospital for observation, I arrived at dawn with coffee and a crocheted blanket I knew she kept just in case. She dozed. Her phone was open to the family group chat. I didn't mean to look. Then I saw it. Mom, let's not tell Lynn. She'll make it about herself. Aunt Terry, agreed. No drama. Uncle Dave, last thing we need is her pity parade and those I'm still family eyes. I took a photo. Not for revenge. For memory. Because gaslighting is easier when the proof evaporates. I never showed it to Grandma. I never replied. I just saved it. My thumbs found the screenshot and the caption I'd written weeks ago. 4 words. Merry Christmas to you. Send. The message went out like a flare. The car filled with the small synthetic chorus of pings. The first was Jenna, WTH, Lynn, then Tyler, our cousin. Dude, what is this? Tyler calls everyone dude, including the cat. Then a number saved as Pam. Only texts when a casserole dies. You did not just send that today. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and watched the house. From the street, it looked like joy. Inside, a glass must have hit a countertop too hard, because the sound cracked across the cold air. A minute later, Jenna called. I let it ring once, then answered. Hey, she said. Her voice was low, like she'd shut herself in the coat closet. Hey! What did you do? Sent the truth, with a bow. She exhaled. Half the family just stood up and left. I blinked. Seriously? Pam's crying. Grandma asked what was going on. Mom went pale. Jenna hesitated. Tyler showed her the screenshot. Did she drop her merry and bright mug? Close. I think she dropped the pecan pie. I shouldn't have laughed. It escaped anyway, sharp, surprised. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. Jenna's voice softened. You okay? Define okay. You're not crazy, she said, fast, like she'd been storing the sentence somewhere safe. They got used to hurting you. You just stopped cooperating. We were quiet. From the porch speaker, someone's silent night bled into the street like a cheap lullaby. Tell Grandma I left something for her, I said, and that I didn't stay because I'm not an exhibit. She's not mad, just confused, but she wants to see you. A beat. Soon. When I hung up, the pings had slowed to an embarrassed drip. Then a message from an unknown number. Pathetic little girl. Classic Uncle Dave. I blocked it because sometimes the only strategy left is subtraction. Another buzz. Noah again. Noah. Still outside? Noah. If you're in the car, breathe. In 4, hold 4, out 6. Noah. Fudge emergency drop here if needed tomorrow. I'll bring coffee. I typed. Sent it. Noah. Good. Truth is clean. Mess comes from people trying to hide it. I drove 2 blocks and parked under a street lamp because curiosity is a hard habit to break. The next wave arrived. Screen recordings from Jenna, voice texts from Pam, and a quiet message from Grandma that made everything else go still. Grandma, call me when you can, sweetheart. No rush. Grandma, I'd like to hear it from you. Grandma, come see me, please. No guilt, no performance. Just the person who kept my lopsided second-grade wreath on her door like it was art. The only family photo in her living room where I'm centered is the one from my trade school graduation. She placed it there herself. She always said Grandpa believed in my hands. Speaking of hands, mine were raw the first month I opened the garage. 2 bays, industrial side of town, paint fumes, and a dream that didn't need an alma mater to exist. What it needed was a start, and Grandpa had given it to me, quietly, through a trust he'd been feeding for years. The bank called me to confirm the wire. $50,000. No fanfare, just a note in the memo line, build something good. I didn't announce it. People who love you don't require press releases. But within a week of signing my first lease, Mom texted, Are you opening a shop? Why wouldn't you ask us for help? I told her Grandpa already had. Within hours, Uncle Dave called to ask if I manipulated an old man into changing his will. They used the word split a lot, like something that was never in their names could be divided with a moral knife. I hadn't been to a gathering since, until tonight. I looked up at the house and wondered how many chairs were actually empty in there, if my seat ever existed, or if it was always a threat disguised as furniture. The engine idled. Frost crept back across the windshield like a curtain lowering on Act 1. My screen lit again, this time with a blast of ant emojis and Tyler's running commentary. He narrates drama like a sportscaster. Somewhere between the snowman and the bruh, the group chat finally fractured enough to let light in. Jenna texted, Pam told your mom, this is what we do. We leave her out. Aunt Terry stormed into the night. Uncle Dave went looking for his dignity in the driveway. And apparently, Mom said the line that has lived in my ribs for years, out loud, in front of people with ears. She's not one of us. There it was, not a rumor, not an implication. A sentence, finished. I turned the car around. The fudge slid on the seat and thumped against the console like a small, edible heart. On the drive home, I didn't imagine confrontations or speeches. I pictured a key, tiny, unlabeled, tucked in a drawer somewhere I hadn't opened yet. I didn't know then it would be real. The apartment was quiet. I put the fudge in the fridge, set my phone to Do Not Disturb, and lit a peppermint candle I found on sale because I am, despite everything, a sucker for small comforts. I opened my notes app and typed a single line. This seat was never yours to give away. Saved. Closed. Morning would come with Grandma's voice and tea that tasted like memory. Morning would come with a folder and a deed and a different definition of family. But for now, peace arrived like a mechanic's secret. Not flashy, not loud, just a fix that held. When I finally drove to Grandma's house the next morning, the air still smelled like winter and unfinished business. Her porch was the same as always, the faded welcome mat, a ceramic snowman missing half its nose, and my crooked second-grade wreath still hanging proudly on the door. She opened it before I could knock. Hi, sweetheart, she said softly, her voice warm, like fresh bread. Hi, Grandma. She didn't hug me right away, just took me in, the circles under my eyes, the stiffness I'd worn home from that driveway, then nodded as if she already knew everything. Come in, tea's ready. Her living room looked exactly as it had when Grandpa was alive. Crocheted blankets, family photos, the same antique clock ticking behind a stack of crossword puzzles. For the first time in months, I felt safe enough to sit without watching my own posture. We settled at the kitchen table. 2 cups of cinnamon tea steamed between us. She stirred hers once, twice, then said, I saw the messages, Lynn, the ones you sent, and the ones they wrote about you. My stomach tightened. I didn't want you to get pulled into it. I should have been in it all along, she said, eyes shining but steady. You were protecting me, but I should have been protecting you. The kettle whistled faintly from the stove. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It's been like that for years, I said finally. The jokes, the exclusions, the way they talk to me like I'm defective. Grandma reached across the table, her hand thin but sure on mine. You're not defective, Lynn. You're different. There's a world of strength in that. You built something with your own 2 hands. Your grandfather saw that, which is why he did what he did. My throat caught. They think I manipulated him. Her laugh was gentle and tired. Your grandfather couldn't be manipulated into eating his vegetables. He did what he believed in. A small smile pulled at my mouth. She stood, shuffled to a cabinet, and came back holding a worn manila folder. He left a few things outside the official estate paperwork. Quiet things. He said I'd know when to give them to you. Inside was a deed, not for the house, but for the lot behind it. A narrow stretch of vacant land near the old train depot. What is this? I asked, tracing the seal. Your grandfather bought it for your future, she said simply. He wanted you to have something no one could take. A space to build, create, expand. He said, Lynn's going to need room for her legacy. I stared at the page, my name typed cleanly in the beneficiary line. I didn't know if I should give it to you, Grandma admitted. But after last night, I realized waiting helps no one. You've earned it 100 times over. It hit me harder than I expected. Not just the land, but the faith behind it. For once, someone had chosen me on purpose. Grandma busied herself with the tin of cookies to keep from crying. There's a small storage unit on the lot, too, she added casually. Your grandfather kept some of his tools and blueprints there. He said maybe one day you'd build something together. Blueprints? I blinked. For what? She smiled, the kind that meant she knew more than she was ready to say. You'll see when you're ready. I nodded, my chest tight in the best possible way. When I left her house, the morning light was just beginning to warm the frost off the grass. My phone buzzed. Notifications stacked like a deck of bad cards. Screenshots, whispers, and, predictably, Facebook posts. Mom's newest masterpiece read, When family turns on you, remember diamonds are made under pressure. 17 hashtags followed. #still standing, #family. First, fake people everywhere, #unbothered queen. And somehow, let them talk. I almost laughed. Almost. Then I noticed the photo attached, her standing proudly in front of the tree, my childhood stocking photoshopped out. The blur where my name had been was still visible, ghostly. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't feed it. I just saved the post. Because one day, this level of pettiness would deserve its own frame. Later that evening, I sat in my garage long after closing, the smell of oil and steel wrapping around me like a memory. My hands found the calluses Grandpa once teased me about. Builder's fingerprints, he called them. The lot deed sat beside me on the counter, a promise folded in paper. Noah texted again. Noah. How's the storm? Lynn. Still thundering online. Mom erased my stocking. Noah. That's fine. She can't erase your name off what's yours. His calm steadied me. I realized how different it felt having someone who didn't make love a negotiation. But peace never lasts long in families that thrive on control. 2 days later, a new message popped up from a number I didn't recognize. I know what your grandmother gave you. That wasn't the plan. We need to discuss this as a family. No signature, but I didn't need one. My mother's tone could be carved in stone. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted damage control. Still, her words gnawed at me. That wasn't the plan. What plan? I went to bed thinking about it, the deed resting on my nightstand. Somewhere in the half-dream between midnight and morning, I heard Grandpa's voice the way I remembered it. Steady, amused, a whisper against the noise. Let them argue, kiddo. You just build. And I knew then that the real storm hadn't even started. Wednesday afternoons at the garage were usually quiet. the kind of slow where I could actually hear the hum of the vending machine and think about repainting the door again. I was under a truck, socket wrench in hand, when the sound of sharp heels tapped across the concrete. I froze. Those heels didn't belong in a place that smelled like grease and honest labor. I rolled out from under the chassis and looked up. Mom! Designer coat, manicured nails, and a handbag that could pay for a month's rent. Her perfume hit before her words did. Something floral and expensive that didn't belong anywhere near engine oil. Lynn, she said flatly, we need to talk. I stayed on the mechanic creeper, staring up at her. You're 2 days early. For what? The next dramatic Facebook quote or family meltdown. Her mouth tightened. Can we not do this? Doing nothing is kind of the family tradition, I muttered, sliding out and standing. My coveralls were streaked with grease. She looked at them like they were a crime scene. This place, she began, glancing around. It's smaller than I expected. I thought Grandpa's money would buy something more. Polished. There's more here, I said, just none of it's fake. Her gaze flicked toward the workbench, where the deed sat in its folder. I saw the exact second her expression shifted from discomfort to calculation. Your grandmother told me about the lot. Of course she did, I said, washing my hands at the sink. She treats me like family. She shouldn't have given it to you. Mom's tone sharpened. That land was supposed to be for everyone, for the family. I turned, drying my hands. The same family that laughed about not inviting me to Grandma's hospital room? That was taken out of context. No, I said. You just didn't like the context being read back to you. Her jaw clenched. You're twisting things. For once, I said, I'm not twisting anything. I'm just repeating what you said. She sighed, that heavy, self-pitying kind of sigh that's really a weapon. We didn't mean to hurt you, Lynn. You've always been so different. We just didn't know how to handle it. There it was again. That word, different. Family code for disappointing. You mean I didn't go to college, marry someone from your church, and name my kid after Grandpa's middle name? Her painted smile wavered. I only ever wanted the best for you. No, I said evenly. You wanted what looked best to you. That's not the same thing. Something in her eyes flickered. Panic, maybe, or recognition. The realization that her favorite scripts didn't work anymore. I miss you, she said softly. I miss having you at the table. Jenna's wedding is coming up, and... I wasn't invited. Her lips parted. Of course you were. Jenna showed me the guest list, I said. My name wasn't on it. Well, we hadn't finalized... Stop, I said. Please, just stop. The silence after that was almost kind. This visit isn't about missing me, I continued. It's about control. You lost it, and now you're scrambling. Her voice cracked. I'm your mother, and I'm your daughter, I said, steady. Funny how that only matters when you need something. That one landed. She flinched, the way people do when they finally realize they can't guilt you anymore. And then the glass door chimed. Should I come back later? Jenna stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee, clearly unaware she'd just stepped into Act 3 of a long, dysfunctional play. Mom turned toward her, voice tight. Jenna. Hi, Aunt Melissa, Jenna said cautiously. I brought Lynn her coffee. Mom's eyes darted between us. You shouldn't get involved. Jenna placed the coffee on the counter with a calmness I envied. I already am. What's that supposed to mean? Mom demanded. It means, Jenna said, some of us are done pretending silence is loyalty. Watch your tone, Mom warned. Or what? Jenna's voice didn't rise. It flattened, steady and sharp. You'll erase my stocking too? I couldn't help it. A laugh burst out of me, quick and startled. Mom's face went pale. I'm leaving, she said quickly, grabbing her bag. She made it to the door before turning back, eyes wet and furious. I hope one day you regret this. Maybe, I said, but it won't be today. She left, her heels clicking against the concrete like punctuation marks. When the sound faded, the silence that followed was heavier than any engine I'd ever lifted. Jenna exhaled. Sorry, she followed me here. I didn't think she'd actually come in. It's fine, I said, leaning against the counter. Honestly, that was almost therapeutic. Jenna smiled weakly. You handled that way better than I would have. I've had practice, I said. She hesitated, then added quietly. You know, she's not used to you standing up for yourself. I used to mistake shrinking for keeping the peace, I said. Same. We both looked around the garage, the light filtering through the high window, the faint buzz of the heater, the lingering scent of motor oil. And for the first time, I realized the truth of it. This wasn't just my workplace. It was my boundary made solid, my independence nailed and welded into place. I wasn't alone anymore either. Thanks for coming, I said softly. Jenna nodded. Grandma's planning something, by the way. Says she wants to do New Year's small, with only the ones who matter. I raised an eyebrow. And I'm on that list? She smiled. You're at the top. Later that night, I sat alone again in the garage, a single light bulb humming above me. The folder with the deed rested beside my cup of cold coffee. I traced the edges and thought about what Grandma said. That Grandpa had kept something in a storage unit on that lot. A plan, blueprints, tools. Whatever it was, I was ready to see it. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing a place at their table. I was building my own. The invitation came in the mail 2 days after Christmas. No group text, no guilt-laced, "you should come." Just a simple cream-colored envelope with my name written in Grandma's careful cursive. New Year's Day lunch, small, just the ones who matter. Hope you can join us. Bring fudge. I stared at it longer than I should have, turning it over in my hands, like it might vanish if I blinked too hard. It wasn't the words that got me. It was the tone. Gentle, direct, and for once, free of obligation. When New Year's morning came, the sky was pale and kind, the kind of cold that doesn't bite, just lingers to remind you you're still here. I baked the fudge, added walnuts even though I hated them, and drove across town to Grandma's. Her front porch looked brighter somehow, like peace had moved back in. The same wreath, the same chimes, but quieter air. Inside, laughter, real laughter, spilled from the kitchen. "Lynn, you made it!" Jenna's voice pulled me into the living room. There were maybe 8 people total. Grandma, Jenna, Tyler, Aunt Pam, and 2 younger cousins I hadn't seen since braces and bad haircuts. No mom, no Uncle Dave, no tension thick enough to choke on. Just peace. The table was small but warm. Paper hats, sparkling cider, Grandma's infamous overcooked ham that no one dared criticize out loud. Tyler actually passed me the mashed potatoes without a sarcastic comment. Progress. Halfway through lunch, Grandma tapped her glass with her spoon. "I'm not making a toast," she said, "because I hate cliches, but I do want to say something." Everyone quieted. "I used to think keeping the family together meant smoothing things over," she began, avoiding conflict, pretending bad behavior was just a phase. Her eyes flicked toward me. I was wrong. Silence fell, the kind that fills a room without crowding it. "Family," Grandma continued, "isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who listens, who brings the fudge, who doesn't erase stockings on Facebook." Laughter broke out, mine included. Even Tyler nearly choked on his drink. Grandma raised her glass. "Starting this year, I'm only spending time with people who act like family, not just call themselves that. To chosen family." "To chosen family," we echoed, clinking glasses. After dessert, Grandma motioned me into the kitchen. "Help me with the dishes," she said. Though her sink was practically empty, it was never about the dishes. When the others drifted to the living room, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a small brass key tied with a faded red ribbon. "What's this?" I asked. "To the storage unit on your lot," she said, "the one your grandfather used." My pulse quickened. "He kept tools there, right?" "And blueprints," she said, her smile softening. "He wanted to build something with you, a space you'd own together. He didn't get the chance." I turned the key over in my hand, the metal warm from her touch. "Why are you giving this to me now?" "Because it's time," she said simply. "And because your mother's been calling me all week about the land plan, I think she finally realized she's not in charge of this one." A quiet laugh escaped me. "Of course she has. She'll come back around," Grandma said. "But until then, you build. Whatever you decide to make it something that lasts longer than their opinions." I tucked the key into my jacket pocket. "I will." She smiled. "That's my girl." By the time I got home that night, the city had already started popping fireworks early. I stood on my apartment balcony, watching the lights bloom and fade across the sky. No messages from Mom. None from Uncle Dave either. Just a string of posts from distant cousins arguing in a family group chat I'd left years ago. For once, the silence felt like peace, not punishment. Then my phone buzzed. A new notification. It was a wedding invitation. Jenna's. Printed. Hand-delivered. My name spelled correctly in the corner. Lynn Barnes. Front row. Taped inside the envelope was a small note written in blue ink. "You have a seat this time. For real. Bring tissues. Grandma's speech might start another revolution." I smiled, but as I set the envelope down, a smaller one slipped out, folded neatly, my mother's handwriting on the front. "Can we meet before the wedding?" No apology, no explanation, just that. For a long time, I didn't move. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend the request didn't exist. But another part, the part that had learned peace, wasn't passive. knew it was time to close the circle. Whatever she wanted, this time I'd meet her as someone different. Not the daughter begging for space, but the woman who already owned hers. I texted Jenna. Tell Grandma I'll bring the fudge again. Then another to Noah. Coffee after work tomorrow? He replied instantly. Always. As I slipped the brass key from my pocket, I turned it over once more, feeling the groove against my thumb. Somewhere out there was a small storage unit waiting. A space Grandpa built for Faith. And maybe, just maybe, for me to start again. Next week would bring that coffee meeting and the quiet showdown I'd been rehearsing in my head for months. But tonight, I let myself exhale. Because for the first time, the year was starting without apology. I met Mom 3 days before the wedding at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground, public enough for civility, quiet enough for truth. She was already seated when I arrived, 2 drinks in front of her, 1 coffee, 1 tea. When she saw me, her face flickered between relief and restraint. I didn't know what you liked anymore, she said, sliding the coffee toward me. Coffee's fine, I replied, sitting down. She looked older. Not dramatically, just softer, like someone who'd finally realized that pretending costs more than honesty. Her hands were restless on the table. I heard about New Year's, she said, about Grandma's speech. She meant every word, I said. A quiet nod. And I heard you have the key now. I didn't answer. She looked down at her tea, then back up at me. I didn't come to fight, Lynn. Good, I said, because I don't have any fight left, just boundaries. She winced, the word landing like a slap. I made mistakes. No, I said gently, you made patterns. Her eyes glistened. I wanted you to be safe. You wanted me to be predictable, I said. That's not the same thing. Silence stretched between us, fragile, uncertain. For once, she didn't fill it with justifications. Finally, she said quietly, Do you still think you're not one of us? I smiled faintly. Mom, that's the wrong question. She frowned. Then what's the right one? I leaned back, wrapping both hands around my coffee cup. It's not whether I'm one of you. It's whether you ever tried to be one of me. Her mouth opened, then closed. I watched the realization flicker and fade. Not understanding, but awareness. That was enough. I was angry, she whispered finally, and I thought if I pushed you away, you'd chase me, the way your cousins always did when I scolded them. But you didn't. You just left. I nodded slowly, because I finally believed you meant it. Tears rimmed her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. So what now? I stood, leaving my half-finished coffee behind. Now you let me be happy without needing to control it. When I walked out, she didn't follow. For once, that felt like progress. The day of the wedding dawned clear and sharp, winter sunlight glinting off snow that hadn't decided whether to stay or melt. The venue was small, wrapped in white flowers and string lights. As I stepped inside, I froze for a second. Not from nerves, but recognition. Near the head table, perfectly centered, was a single name card in elegant script. Lynn Barnes. No qualifiers, no plus ones, no, if she shows up, just me. Jenna spotted me and waved so hard her corsage nearly flew off. You made it. Front row, right? I teased. Front and center, she grinned. Grandma's orders. Grandma, of course, looked radiant. Silver dress, proud smile, no apologies. She squeezed my hand before the ceremony. You look like someone who stopped carrying ghosts, she whispered. Maybe I just built a new house for them, I said, and she laughed. During the vows, sunlight poured through the chapel window, hitting the silver key that hung from a chain around my neck, the one from Grandpa's storage unit. The metal was warm against my skin. I hadn't opened the unit yet. Somehow, I knew it could wait. It wasn't about what he'd left there. It was about what he'd left in me. At the reception, I found my seat. The name card gleamed under the soft lights. Across the table, Tyler raised his glass. Guess what Mom said when she saw your name? What? He smirked. She muttered, So, she got a seat after all. I lifted my glass, smiling. Damn right I did. We laughed, the kind that releases years of tension from your ribs. Later, while people danced, Grandma sat beside me. You know, she said, your mother's trying to change. Slowly, clumsily, but trying. I know, I said, and I hope she does. I just can't hold the door open forever. That's fair, Grandma said, patting my hand. Just don't let your peace turn into walls. I won't, I promised. She leaned closer. You still have that key? I nodded, touching it lightly. Good, she said, because your grandfather's plans were never just about a building. He wanted to remind you that you could build anything. I looked out across the room, at Jenna laughing with her new husband, at the cousins who'd stayed, at Grandma's quiet pride. The noise softened into something beautiful. Later that night, when the music faded and guests drifted into the cold, I stepped outside under the fairy lights. The sky was a dark velvet dome, the stars scattered like possibilities. I took out my phone and opened the Notes app, the same one where I'd once written a single line after that Christmas Eve rejection. Under it, I added another. Sometimes the seat you lose is the one that teaches you to build your own table. I closed my phone, smiled, and slipped the key back into my jacket pocket. Tomorrow I'd drive to that empty lot, my lot, and unlock the storage unit. Whatever waited inside, blueprints, tools, dust, I'd make something from it. Something that would outlast hurt. Something that would carry my name, steady and certain. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's permission to take up space. And I had the key to prove it.